Today we're going to talk about taking things away from our children when they do something wrong. We're going to talk about that practice, whether it works, what else we might be able to do. Have you ever done that? You know what I'm talking about, right? They're on the iPad too long, so we take that away for a little while, or they can't have it for the rest of the night. Or maybe we take a favorite toy away when they refuse to listen. Or maybe we say they can't have dessert tonight because they were mean to their sister. You get the idea. Then boom, everything just explodes, right? Instead of teaching them a lesson, you're suddenly dealing with a nuclear meltdown. You feel like you've completely shattered the connection with your child, who's even further from learning whatever it was you were hoping to teach them. And if you're thinking, yeah, I've done that, you're so not alone. That was one of those lessons that took me a really long time to learn through a lot of trial and, unfortunately, error. And second, you haven't been doing it wrong. You've just been handed a parenting strategy that flat out doesn't work the way we were told it would. Let's talk about why taking things away usually backfires with our autistic children and what actually does work instead. So look, first, I do want you to know that you deserve a lot of credit for trying to use the strategies you've been told are good parenting. Hold those boundaries, be consistent. They break that rule, you take away a privilege. And honestly, on paper, it kind of sounds logical, right? They stayed on the iPad too long, no iPad tomorrow. Didn't clean up their mess, no screen time. Hit their sibling, say goodbye to dessert. The whole idea is that they'll somehow connect these dots and think, I better not do that again or I'll lose something I love. But here's the thing, right? For kids in general, and for our autistic kids especially, those dots just don't connect the way we think they will. Let's talk about why this approach usually does go sideways fast. First, the lesson isn't always clear to your child. They throw something in frustration and you take it away. In your mind, it's simple cause and effect. But in their mind, to the extent they have the ability to think about it logically at all when they're so dysregulated, it's more like, that's mine, that's unfair. They're not sitting there reflecting on their behavior. They're just confused, they're upset. They're upset about losing something, that makes sense, losing something they love, for reasons that feel completely random to them. Second, taking away things doesn't actually build any skills. Right. Let's say they were on the iPad way past their time limit, so you take it away for the day. But hold up. The reason they couldn't get off was because of poor impulse control or difficulty stopping mid-task or having anxiety about the next transition. Then taking away the iPad doesn't teach them how to do any of those things better next time. It just teaches them that they messed up. Again, I'm trying to think of an example that might apply to adults. Say, for example, you were given an assignment at work and you weren't really given the tools to do it, but you were just told to execute something. And you did the best you could, you turned it in, and your boss was furious. This is not at all what I wanted. This isn't correct. I'm taking away your paycheck. So taking away the paycheck doesn't really give you the skills when he brings it back tomorrow and says you have to do it again. You know your paycheck's going to get taken away because you don't have the skills. And I know it feels different to think about turning off the iPad because it feels like, well, that's easy. But that's easy to you, right? It's not easy to our kids in the same way that whatever assignment we didn't execute properly at work would have been easy for someone else who had the tools, but we just didn't. I hope that makes sense. What your child actually needs is more support in that moment. Maybe a visual timer, a heads up, a warning, someone to sit with them while they make that tough transition, or probably the best idea might even be helping them find something else to do right afterward that they actually like. Not chores, but maybe play a game with them or have a dance party. Something that makes giving up the iPad a little less difficult. The third reason is that it triggers even more dysregulation. Think about the emotional side for a second. For many autistic kids, losing something that they love, especially if it's something predictable or comforting, it can feel absolutely catastrophic to them. That consequence, it doesn't feel like a gentle lesson. Their nervous system reads it as danger. And once that flood of stress hormones hits, learning stops completely. So you're not teaching anymore. You and they both are just trying to survive the aftermath. Fourth, it completely changes what they're focused on. Here's what typically happens next, right? Your child stops thinking about what they did wrong, and all they can think about obsessively is how unfair it is that they lost their iPad. I think that's where the paycheck analogy actually makes sense. You'd be infuriated if you tried so hard to do something without the proper tools and then you weren't paid for it. You would obsess about the paycheck being taken away, not about how you might do it better tomorrow if it were given to you. Now you're stuck in a whole new power struggle. And the actual problem you were trying to address, it's totally lost in the shuffle. Fifth, over time, it damages your relationship with your child. And this part really matters. And I know you feel it too. I know that my son looked at me like, oh, I can't help this. I already feel terrible. Why are you making it worse, Mom? And that connection is actually the key to helping them learn and grow. So let's talk about what to try instead, which is important, not only because we want this behavior or this situation to stop, but also because we need to feel like we're doing something about it, right? To be good parents, we have to address these kinds of behaviors. So before I jump into what actually does work, can I ask a quick favor? If you know another parent who's struggling with this stuff, can you please share this video with them? It helps me reach more families who could use this support. All right, now let's jump into what actually works. The first important thing is to stay in support mode. Let's go back to the iPad example. Instead of, you didn't turn it off when I asked, so no iPad tomorrow, you can try something like, looks like turning it off was really hard today. Tomorrow, let's try again, but we'll set a timer and I'll come sit with you and help make that switch easier. Now, you might be thinking, all right, my teenager is not going to care about that. They're still going to be angry. And maybe so, but they feel the connection. Regardless of what their response is in the moment, try to just believe that the connection will make a difference. So the difference in what I'm suggesting and taking away the item, it's the same boundary, but now you're setting them up to succeed the next time. You're not punishing them for struggling this time. So the second thing you could do is get curious instead of punitive. When you catch yourself thinking your child is just being difficult or disrespectful, hit that pause button and ask yourself, what else could be true here? What skill might be missing that made it hard for them to meet expectations? Was it time awareness, emotion regulation, handling disappointment, or just general impulse control? If your child couldn't meet the expectation, taking something away won't solve that. Building the missing skill will. Third thing you can do is wait for the teachable moment, and this is huge. Don't try to teach during the meltdown. It's like trying to install new software while the computer is crashing. And then you can say something like what we mentioned before, like, hey, I noticed that was really hard. Let's talk about or think about together what might make it easier next time. That is when their brain's actually ready to learn. So the next time your child isn't meeting your expectation, whether it's getting off the iPad or hitting their sibling, I want you to pause before jumping to they should know better and ask yourself, what if they can't do this yet? What if they're missing a skill, not just being difficult? Taking stuff away won't teach that missing skill. It just won't. But connection, support, and teaching in those calm moments, that's what actually works. And I've seen it transform families just like yours, time and time again. You don't have to resort to punishment to feel like you're doing something about the behavior. Oof, that's a big one. You can actually just lead with clarity and connection, and honestly, it works better anyway. If this approach resonates with you, hit that subscribe button. I share strategies like this every week, and if you're ready for deeper support, you can learn more about coaching with me at Autismparentsolutions. Remember, you don't need to fix everything overnight. You just need the right perspective, some support to maintain that perspective, and a path forward that actually fits your unique child. Because that child, they're not just trying to drive you crazy. They're trying to tell you something. And when you learn to listen differently, everything can change. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next one.